You're not failing because you're lazy. You're failing because your day is getting sliced into invisible pieces you never agreed to. Every ping steals focus, every tab taxes your working memory, and every unplanned quick minute turns into a cognitive detour. As a neurologist and neuroscientist, here's the uncomfortable truth. The brain is a prediction machine, not a productivity machine. If your environment predicts distraction, your attention will follow. If your schedule predicts chaos, your decisions will get cheaper by noon. Today that ends. This isn't about apps, hacks with price tags, or superhuman willpower. It's a rebuild of defaults. Tiny, zero-cost shifts that close the leaks, reclaim deep focus, and make momentum automatic. In the next minutes, you'll install 21 micro-behaviors used by the top 0.01% to ship more with less stress, using nothing but your choices. You'll see where your time escapes. Cut the noise at the source and design a day that protects your best hours without explaining yourself to anyone. Listen for the internal questions that matter. What am I optimizing for? What will I refuse to tolerate? What gets one clean yes today, and what gets a silent no? By the end, you'll run a personal operating system that feels lighter, not stricter. Start observing your day like a scientist, acting like an athlete, and deciding like a strategist. No drama, no gimmicks, just compounding wins that you can feel by tonight. Hack 1. The 7-minute reality audit. Set a timer for 7 minutes and map one ordinary day with ruthless honesty. Every app opened, every tab switch, every just checking, every time you stood up without purpose. No rounding, no stories, just the ledger. This brief snapshot exposes attention leakage in a way lectures never do. You're building awareness, the precondition for control. Mark the exact moments your focus fractured and what triggered it. Notification, boredom, uncertainty, fear of starting. Note the cost in re-entry time after each interruption. The brain pays a switching tax every time context shifts. The audit makes that cost visible and, once seen, intolerable. Categorize leaks by pattern: morning drift, mid-afternoon slump, pre-evening autopilot. Identify a single recurring pinch point where momentum dies. That's your first leverage point. End by extracting one rule for tomorrow, not 10. For example, during the first 90 minutes, no inputs, only outputs. The audit is not about shame, it's a mirror. When you can measure a leak, you can close it. When you can name a trigger, you can rewire it. Most people overestimate their deep work hours by a factor of 3. They believe they worked for 6 hours but produced output for 2. The remaining 4 vanished into invisible micro-interruptions. A ping here, a random thought there, a browser detour that seemed urgent. The audit strips away that illusion. You write down the truth in real time, not from memory. Memory smooths over gaps. The ledger doesn't. Track the moment you broke flow, what pulled you away, and how long it took to return. Research shows it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully re-engage after a single interruption. Multiply that by a dozen daily derailments, and you see why entire afternoons dissolve. The top 0.01% run this audit quarterly, not once. They treat attention like a balance sheet. If you can't account for where it went, you can't defend it tomorrow. The 7-minute investment reveals patterns you've been blind to. Checking email before deciding your priority, opening social feeds during cognitive friction, refreshing the same tabs out of habit. Once the pattern is named, you can intervene. Replace the bad trigger with a better reflex. Swap the scroll for a sentence. Swap the refresh for a written next step. This is not about perfection, it's about visibility. And visibility is the fastest path to control. Hack 2. The 0.01% anti-goal filter. Here's where your day stops being crowded and starts being selective. High performers don't begin by asking, "What do I want to achieve?" They start with, "What am I absolutely not willing to live with anymore?" That shift sounds small, but neurologically it changes everything. The brain is wired to avoid pain faster than it moves toward reward. When you define anti-goals, you attach a sharp emotional signal to the wrong uses of your time, and your attention begins to reject them almost automatically. Sit down for a few minutes and write in plain language the outcomes you refuse to tolerate. Days with zero deep work, evenings destroyed by late emails, projects that drag on with no clear end, conversations that leave you drained and resentful. Get specific. "I never want to end the day unsure of what I actually moved forward" is an anti-goal. "I never want my most focused hours eaten by someone else's urgency" is another. You are drawing lines in the sand for your nervous system. Now connect each anti-goal to concrete behaviors that must disappear or shrink. If you never again want your mornings hijacked, that implies no reactive messaging before your first block of deep work. If you never again want evenings soaked in low-value admin, that implies a hard cut-off time for trivial tasks. You are not just chasing goals, you are pruning realities. This is what the top 0.001% do instinctively. They are ruthless in removing entire categories of fake productivity from their life. Endless status meetings, vanity projects, heroic last-minute rescues that exist only because of poor planning. Every yes that doesn't violate an anti-goal becomes easier. Every request that collides with one becomes a near-automatic no. Your calendar stops being a random collection of obligations and starts reflecting a protected zone around what matters. Notice how this filter simplifies decision-making. Instead of debating every new offer on its own, you run it through a small set of non-negotiables. Does this move me closer to a day with more deep work than noise, or does it drag me back into a pattern I swore to avoid? If it breaks an anti-goal, the answer is already decided. You free cognitive bandwidth and emotional energy because you are not arguing with yourself every hour. Over time, this creates a new identity, someone whose time is expensive, not because of ego, but because of clarity. And once your brain has a clear picture of what you're done tolerating, the next step becomes obvious. Design days around the few actions that knock down everything else. That's where the single domino day comes in next. Hack 3. The single domino day. Most people enter the day carrying 20 half-important intentions and end it with 20 half-finished tasks, the top 0. So 1% walk in with one clear domino, one action that, if completed, knocks down a chain of progress and makes everything else easier or irrelevant. This is not motivational fluff. It is how the brain handles complexity. When your prefrontal cortex is forced to juggle multiple priorities with equal weight, it stalls, procrastinates, and seeks quick dopamine hits. When you give it one unambiguous target, it can allocate attention and willpower like a laser. Start by asking a brutal question at the beginning of the day. If only one thing moves forward today, which single action would create the greatest downstream impact? Not the loudest task, not the most urgent request, but the most leverage. It might be outlining a key presentation, making a decision your team is stuck waiting on, or finally structuring that new offer that will pay you for years. Once you've chosen your domino, rewrite your day around it. Your job is not to fit it in between emails and calls. Your job is to build a protective shell around the block where it gets done. That might mean scheduling it in your first high-energy window, turning off notifications, and making it clear to others that you are unavailable for that stretch. The neurological goal is simple. When your brain is freshest, it meets the hardest and most meaningful work, not the shallow noise. Treat everything else as optional until the domino falls. Will minor fires appear? Of course. But most of them can wait 90 minutes without the world ending. Each time you choose the domino over the distraction, you are training a deeper identity. I am someone who finishes the thing that matters first. The power of the single domino day shows up in how your evenings feel. Instead of replaying a chaotic blur of busyness, you can point to one concrete win that shifted your trajectory. That emotional feedback loop matters. The brain remembers the satisfaction of meaningful completion and becomes more willing to enter that state again tomorrow. Over weeks, this practice compounds. Bigger projects stop feeling like mountains and start feeling like a series of clear daily dominoes. Your schedule might still be full, but it is no longer in charge. You are. And once you learn to anchor each day around a single high-impact action, the next question naturally appears. How many of your hours are being stolen by invisible obligations that don't deserve to exist at all? That's where the invisible meetings rule changes the game. Hack 4, the invisible meetings rule. Look at your week and count how many meetings you actually had. Not just the ones on your calendar, but every quick call, every "got a minute?" every voice note that turned into a back and forth, every time someone hovered near your desk and you let the conversation sprawl. Those are invisible meetings. They don't look like much in isolation, but neurologically they are brutal. Every unplanned interaction forces your brain to drop its current context, load a new one, then struggle to reload the original task later. That switching cost is real. It's why you can be busy all day and still feel like nothing meaningful got done. The top 0.01% treat invisible meetings as a silent tax on their focus, and they refuse to pay it blindly. They don't become antisocial, they become intentional. Start by noticing where these micro-meetings appear. Is it when you answer messages instantly? When you leave your status perpetually available? When you keep your door or chat wide open out of guilt or habit? Once you see the pattern, you can change the rules. Set clear availability windows for live interaction and stick to them. Outside those windows, default to asynchronous communication, concise messages, clear questions, shared documents instead of real-time debates. You are teaching your environment how to treat your attention. At first, people might push back. They're used to instant access. But when your responses become sharper, your decisions clearer, and your results harder to ignore, resistance fades. You are no longer the person who is always on. You are the person whose time actually moves things. This rule is not just about protecting hours, it's about protecting cognitive depth. Every time you let an invisible meeting intrude on a block of deep work, you send your brain a signal. Focus is negotiable. Over time, it learns to stay shallow, always half expecting interruption. When you begin to contain these interactions into defined slots, you send the opposite signal. There are sacred zones in your day where nothing casually walks in. This shift doesn't require tools or titles, just decisions. You can start small. For 1 week, declare 2 focus blocks per day as no live access periods, then bundle small questions and updates into a single check-in. Watch how many interruptions were never truly urgent. Watch how your single domino task suddenly has room to breathe. And once your time is no longer being shredded by invisible meetings, you earn the freedom to do something far more powerful. Start shaping tomorrow's decisions before you even wake up. That's where the future inbox trick comes in next. Hack 5. The future inbox trick. There's a moment every morning when your brain is vulnerable. You wake up, open your inbox or your messages, and instantly hand over control of the day to whatever shows up first. From a neurological perspective, that is like letting strangers program your prefrontal cortex before it is fully awake. The top 0.01% do something very different. They decide tomorrow's moves while their mind is still clear today, then deliver those decisions back to themselves from the future. That is the future inbox trick. Before you shut down for the night, you become tomorrow's strategist instead of tomorrow's firefighter. You write a short message to your future self that removes guesswork and friction from the moment you sit down to work. Not a pep talk, not vague motivation, but specific instructions. Open your email, notes app, or a simple piece of paper you'll see first thing and write as if you were a calm project manager talking to a talented but easily distracted operator. Here's what matters most today. Here's the first action. Here's what to ignore. Break the day into 1 clear domino task and 2 supporting actions. Include links, file names, and exact starting points so there is 0 friction when you begin. Add a line about what not to do early. Do not open social media before 11. Do not touch low-value admin until the main draft is done. You are preloading decisions while your willpower is high, so your future, more tired self doesn't have to argue with impulses. This is how you bypass morning confusion. When you sit down, you are not asking, "What should I do?" You are following a plan you already agreed to when your brain was sharper. The power of this trick is that it attacks decision fatigue at the root. Most procrastination is not laziness, it is uncertainty disguised as delay. You don't know exactly where to start, so you reach for the easiest stimulus, inbox, feeds, random tabs. When your future inbox is waiting, the path of least resistance becomes the right one. The brain loves clarity. Give it a clear, pre-packaged first move, and it will step into motion faster. Over time, this nightly habit compounds. Your days start smoother. Your mornings stop feeling like a negotiation. You begin to trust yourself more because past you consistently sets future you up to win. And once you feel that alignment, you're ready for an even bolder shift, changing the default way you say yes and no, so your mission pulls you forward instead of other people's agendas. That's exactly what the next topic, the default yes designed no, will rewire for you. Hack 6. The default yes designed no. Your calendar is not crowded because you say yes too little. It is crowded because your default settings were never designed on purpose. Most people live with an unconscious rule. If I can technically do it and it won't ruin my life, I'll say yes. The top 0.01% flip that. Their default yes is reserved for anything that directly serves their core mission, and everything else must climb over a high predefined wall to get in. This isn't cold or selfish. It is neurological hygiene. Every new commitment you accept occupies mental space long before and long after the actual event. Your brain rehearses it, worries about it, and leaves a tab open for it. When you agree too easily, you are giving away memory, not just time. The first step is to define in 1 or 2 sentences what your current mission actually is for this season of life. Not forever, just now. Maybe it is ship this product, finish this degree, or build a stable client base. That statement becomes the filter. From there, you design your no in advance so you don't have to improvise under social pressure. Write down simple rules. No new recurring meetings for the next 90 days. No volunteering for projects that don't touch your main goal. No accepting vague commitments like, we should collaborate without a clear outline. Practice 1 or 2 polite default responses that buy you space, such as, let me check how this fits with my current priorities and get back to you, followed, if needed, by a firm but respectful decline. You're not deciding in the heat of the moment. The decision was already made when you designed your boundaries. This calms your nervous system. Instead of feeling ambushed by requests, you're executing a script you chose while regulated and clear-headed. Here's the key psychological shift. Every yes is a trade. You're not adding something to an empty plate, you're pushing something else off. When you feel that in your body, saying no stops feeling rude and starts feeling honest. Ask yourself before agreeing, what exactly will this replace? If the answer is my deep work block, my health routine, or my time with the people I care about, that's a designed no. Over time, people start to recognize that your yes actually means something. You're not the always available, constantly stretched person anymore. You become the person whose commitments are rare and reliable. That reputation protects you. It also frees up attention for something much smarter than simply grinding harder. Structuring your days so you always have a main track and a backup track, so no pocket of time is wasted and no distraction can fully knock you off course. That is where the 2-day parallel track changes how you move through your week. Hack 7. The 2-day parallel track. Most people run their life on a single track, main project or nothing. When energy dips, when they get stuck, when they are waiting on someone else, they slide into distraction because there is no intelligent backup plan. The top 0.01% never face that empty space. They operate on a 2-track system, one clearly defined main project and one deliberately chosen micro project that lives in the background. Both matter, but they don't compete. The main track holds the heavy, high-impact work that demands focus and courage. The parallel track holds small, meaningful tasks that move life forward even when your brain doesn't have the power for deep problem-solving. This structure is neurologically smart. It respects that your cognitive capacity fluctuates during the day, but refuses to let those fluctuations turn into wasted time. Here's how you build it. First, name your main track for the next 30 to 90 days in one clean sentence. Write and launch the course. Close the next 10 clients. Finish the thesis. This becomes the spine of your schedule. Then choose a micro project that is light, modular, and valuable. Organizing your knowledge, improving one system per week, building a swipe file, learning a specific skill in tiny lessons. The rule is simple. When you are in a high-energy window, all your effort goes to the main track. When you hit a wall, instead of collapsing into dopamine scrolling, you slide onto the parallel track for a short, predefined block. You're still making progress, but you're not asking your tired brain to climb the same hill. You've given it a gentler slope in the same direction. This isn't multitasking, it is structured sequencing. At any given moment, you're working on only one thing. The difference is that you've removed the classic excuse, "I don't have the energy for the big task, so I might as well check out." You've turned those fragile in-between moments into a reservoir of small wins. Psychologically, this matters. Each micro-win releases a sense of competence that can recharge your willingness to face the main track later. Over a week, the compound effect is huge. The big project moves steadily, and the smaller, often neglected areas of your life stop decaying in the background. You are never fully off the rails. You are simply shifting tracks by design. And once you feel what it's like to have both a powerful main engine and a quiet, always available backup, you're ready for the next upgrade. Planning your days not by stuffing tasks into every gap, but by starting from your real human limits. That's exactly what the constraint-first planning method will lock in for you next. Hack 8. The constraint-first planning method. Most people plan their day like a suitcase. See empty space, shove more in. They start with tasks, then squeeze sleep, food, thinking time and recovery into whatever fragments are left. Neurologically, that is backwards. Your brain is not an infinite battery. It has hard limits. The top 0.01% respect those limits first, then design within them. That's the constraint-first planning method. Instead of asking, "How much can I fit into tomorrow?" you ask, "What are my non-negotiable constraints, and how do I build a powerful day inside those walls?" It sounds restrictive, but this is where real freedom hides. When the brain knows there are protected boundaries, it can commit more fully inside them. When everything is flexible, nothing feels fully safe or important. Start by writing down your real, human constraints for the next day. Fixed appointments, essential sleep, meals, commute, existing responsibilities you truly cannot move. Then add the constraints you usually ignore, but your nervous system desperately needs. One block of deep work, one block of admin, one short period for unplugged recovery. Mark those as non-negotiable first, before a single optional task enters the page. You're drawing the frame of the painting before choosing colors. Only after the frame is clear do you place your single domino task into the best available high-energy slot. Notice what happens psychologically. Instead of treating focus as something you steal from rest, you are giving focus a specific home to live in and rest a specific home to recharge you. The hidden anxiety of "I should be working all the time" starts to loosen because you can see in black and white where work belongs and where it doesn't. Now comes the ruthless part. With what's left, you will not cram, you will rank. List the remaining tasks by impact, then by realistic time cost, and place only what honestly fits into the remaining blocks. Anything that doesn't fit becomes a conscious decision: delegate, delete, or schedule on another day. That friction you feel here is important. It is your brain finally confronting the truth that your capacity is finite. You're moving from fantasy planning to neurological realism. Over time, operating this way changes your relationship with time entirely. Instead of resenting constraints, you start to value them. They stop feeling like cages and start feeling like guardrails that keep you out of the ditch. Your days become tighter, cleaner, and paradoxically more spacious, because you're no longer dragging an invisible cloud of "I should also be doing X, Y, Z" behind you. And once your days are framed by intelligent limits, you can leverage a tiny but powerful tweak at the very start of each task, making the first few seconds so easy that resistance has nowhere to hide. That's what the frictionless start line will give you next. Hack 9. The frictionless start line. The hardest part of any important task is almost never the middle. It's the first 30 seconds. That tiny window is where your brain runs a rapid-fire cost-benefit scan. Is this going to be painful? Confusing? Embarrassing if I fail? If the answer feels even slightly threatening, it will offer you instant alternatives that promise quick dopamine, messages, snacks, random tabs. The top 0.01% don't win by being braver in that moment. They win by making the start so small, so frictionless, that the brain has nothing to fight. This is the frictionless start line. You stop trying to begin the big project and instead design a ridiculously easy first action that your nervous system cannot reasonably reject. Open the document, write one ugly sentence, list 3 bullet ideas on paper, sketch the outline in 60 seconds. The point is not progress yet, the point is entry. From a neurological lens, this is powerful. Once you cross the start line, your brain begins engaging different circuits, not the ones predicting threat, but the ones processing the task itself. Momentum creates its own motivation. You've felt this before. You resist going to the gym, but once you're 10 minutes into the workout, quitting feels stranger than continuing. Here you're engineering that shift on purpose. Before each meaningful task, ask, what is the smallest possible action that still counts as starting? Then commit only to that. If, after doing the tiny start, you genuinely want to stop, you can. Paradoxically, giving yourself that permission calms the internal resistance even more. In practice, you'll find that once the frictionless start is done, your brain often says, "We're here already, might as well keep going." To make this stick, tie the frictionless start line to specific triggers in your day. When you sit at your desk in the morning, your only job is to open the file and write a terrible first line. When you launch your study session, your only job is to rewrite the question you're working on in your own words. Keep the promise microscopic but consistent. Over days and weeks, this changes your identity. You stop being the person who waits for inspiration and become the person who always starts, even if the start is messy. That's what high performers rely on. Not constant intensity, but reliable initiation. And once you can reliably cross the line into motion, you're ready to tackle a deeper trap that silently ruins quality and creates panic. The way you use deadlines. The next strategy, the reverse deadline strategy, will flip how you think about time pressure and make it work for your brain instead of against it. Hack 10, the reverse deadline strategy. Traditional deadlines train your brain to do the worst possible thing: wait. You know something is due Friday, so your nervous system quietly calculates, how long can I delay before panic forces me to move? That delay is not rest. It is low-level stress humming in the background, burning attention and degrading sleep. When you finally start, you are pushing against fear, not working from clarity. The top 0.01% flip this dynamic completely. They don't obsess over when something must be finished. They obsess over when it must be started. That single shift rewires the whole experience of pressure. This is the reverse deadline strategy. Instead of asking, when is this due? You ask, what is the latest safe moment to begin, calmly and with quality? Then you move that start line earlier and treat it as sacred. Here's how you apply it. Take any meaningful project with a due date. Presentation, exam, client delivery, launch. Work backward. How many focused sessions do you realistically need to do this well, without heroic all-nighters? Multiply that number by the length of a solid, deep work block you can handle. Add buffer for life being messy. That math gives you a start deadline, the date and time when work must already be underway, not just on your calendar as an idea. You then schedule those start points like serious appointments. The moment that start deadline arrives, you don't debate. You've already agreed with yourself that this is the safe zone. Your brain experiences pressure earlier, but in a controlled dose that helps, not harms. Instead of a last-minute adrenaline spike, you get a gentle, repeated nudge. We start now, so future me stays safe. Psychologically, this dissolves a huge amount of anxiety. You're no longer carrying vague dread for days because the real effort hasn't begun. Each time you hit a start deadline on time, you send yourself a powerful signal. I can trust my own planning. That trust compounds. Procrastination shrinks, not because you became more disciplined overnight, but because your system stopped inviting panic as a motivator. You also gain room for quality. When things inevitably take longer than expected, you're not already at the cliff edge. You have runway. The reverse deadline strategy turns time from an enemy counting down against you into a structure that quietly protects your future self. And once you've taken control of big-time markers like this, you're ready to examine the subtle leaks that happen inside your work blocks, the tiny context switches that feel harmless but silently destroy depth. That's where the attention-switching tax ledger exposes a truth most people never see. Hack 11. The attention-switching tax ledger. Deep work doesn't collapse because of one giant distraction. It dies by 1,000 tiny cuts. A glance at notifications, a quick tab to check something unrelated, a fast reply that turns into a thread. Each switch seems harmless in isolation, yet it forces your brain to drop the current mental model, load a new one, and then struggle to reconstruct the old context when you return. That reconstruction is expensive. You don't just lose the seconds you spent away, you lose the invisible ramp back up to clarity. The attention-switching tax ledger makes that cost undeniable. During one serious work block today, keep a pen and a small card beside you. Every time you switch context, make a simple mark and jot 2 words for why. Message, boredom, confusion, curiosity, avoidance. Don't judge. Track. You are not scolding yourself. You are creating a receipt for attention. Something powerful happens when you see that tally at the end of a single session. Even 5 switches in 90 minutes can explain why the work felt muddy and slow. The ledger reveals patterns your memory normalizes away. Maybe you switch every time the task gets hard. Maybe the urge to check messages spikes exactly at the 20-minute mark. Maybe it's not notifications at all, but open tabs, broadcasting silent invitations. Once you can see the pattern, you can intervene with surgical precision. If the trigger is confusion, your counter move is to write the next micro step before you stand up. If the trigger is boredom, your counter move is to raise the challenge, set a mini target and a tight clock to create urgency. If the trigger is curiosity, your counter move is a capture list. Write down the thought and promise it a slot later. Make the ledger even more concrete by assigning a rough re-entry cost to each switch. Estimate 2, 5, or 10 minutes, depending on depth. Total it at the end. When you watch an hour of potential progress shrink to 25 effective minutes, your brain finally feels the loss. That feeling is useful. It trains a new reflex. Protect context first, everything else second. Over the next week, aim to cut your marks by 1/3, not to 0. You're building a realistic habit, not chasing purity. Pair the ledger with a visible rule for deep blocks. 1 app, 1 window, 1 goal. Trust the boredom. Let the urge to escape rise and fall without obeying it. As your switching tax drops, something else rises. The satisfying experience of staying inside one mental world long enough to do work you're proud of. With that discipline growing, you're ready to multiply momentum in a social way that doesn't wreck your calendar or your focus. That's where the micro-collaboration burst breaks stagnation in minutes instead of meetings. Hack 12. The micro-collaboration burst. Getting stuck is not a character flaw, it is a predictable brain state. When you've stared at the same problem for too long, your neural pathways begin looping through the same few options. You are not thinking, you are rehearsing. Most people respond by either forcing themselves to grind alone for hours or escaping into distraction. The top 0.01% use a third option, a micro-collaboration burst. Instead of a full meeting, they engineer a 5-10 minute high-intensity exchange with exactly one person who can unlock the next step. No agenda sprawl, no catching up, no slide decks, just a clear question, a compressed time box and a laser-focused outcome. Help me see what I'm missing so I can move again. Neurologically, this injects fresh patterns into a stuck circuit, often enough to break the loop entirely. To use this well, you have to prepare. Before you reach out, define the block in 1 or 2 sharp sentences and decide what you want from the burst. A decision, a sanity check, one new angle, or a yes/no. Then pick the right collaborator. Not necessarily the most senior person, but the one whose thinking style complements yours. You set the frame up front. Can I borrow your brain for 7 minutes on X? I'll send context in 2 lines and leave with a concrete next action. When the burst starts, you respect the clock. State the problem, state what you've already tried, then shut up and listen. Your job is not to defend your ideas, it's to harvest theirs. Take notes, ask clarifying questions. End by saying out loud the exact step you'll take as soon as you hang up. That verbal commitment primes your brain to execute, not to ruminate. The magic is in how small and repeatable this becomes. You're not burning political capital asking for a big favor every time you hit friction. You're trading tiny slices of collective intelligence. Over a week, 3 or 4 micro-collaboration bursts can replace hours of solo wheel spinning and half a dozen bloated meetings. You also create a culture signal. We help each other move fast without hijacking each other's day. And here is the deeper psychological effect. You stop equating asking for help with weakness. You start to see it as a performance tool. Instead of waiting until you are overwhelmed, you call in a micro boost when you're just beginning to feel stuck. That keeps the work light, fluid, and surprisingly fun. Once you experience how a tiny, focused intervention can unstick entire projects, you start to look at your routines differently too. If such small tweaks can change momentum, what would happen if you quietly upgraded one routine per week without drama? That quiet evolution is exactly what the silent systems upgrade will anchor next. Hack 13. The silent systems upgrade. Most people wait for a crisis to change how they work. Burnout hits, a deadline explodes, a project collapses, and only then do they swear to fix everything. Neurologically, that is the worst time to rewire behavior. Your brain is in survival mode, not learning mode. The top 0.01% play a slower, quieter game. They treat their life like software that gets regular updates, not dramatic reinstallations. This is the silent systems upgrade. Once a week, they choose one routine that already exists, how they check email, how they start mornings, how they close the day, and make a tiny, permanent improvement. No big announcement, no all-or-nothing promise. Just a subtle patch to the system that will run hundreds of times in the background. Over months, those micro-upgrades compound into a completely different operating rhythm, without the drama of reinventing yourself. Start by listing your recurring processes. Morning routine, planning, communication, meetings, task capture, study rhythm, workout flow, shutdown ritual. Pick the one that annoys you the most or wastes the most energy. Then zoom in ruthlessly. Ask, where is the exact point of friction here? Where do I consistently lose time, attention, or motivation? Maybe it's the way you open your inbox and get swallowed. Maybe it's the way you end the day with 20 open tabs and no clear sense of completion. Design a microscopic upgrade for that one point. For example, adding a 5-minute inbox triage rule before replying to anything, or writing a 2-line summary of what you did and what's next before you shut your laptop. The change should feel almost too small to matter. That's good. Small changes bypass the brain's resistance systems. Big revolutions trigger alarm. Tiny tweaks slide in under the radar. The key is consistency. You run this upgraded routine every time that process appears, without ceremony until it feels normal. Then next week you choose another system to patch. One upgrade per week equals around 50 per year. Imagine 50 points in your life where friction is lower, clarity is higher, or decisions are simpler. That's not a new you, it's a smoother you. The version of you who doesn't leak as much cognitive energy, just existing. Psychologically, this approach also protects your self-image. You don't have to label your old self as a failure to justify change. You simply acknowledge that systems age and can be improved. That mindset makes experimentation safe. You can test, keep what works, discard what doesn't, and keep moving without ego drama. And as your systems become more reliable, another challenge appears. How do you pause deep, absorbing work without losing the thread, so you can re-enter flow quickly instead of starting from zero every time? That's where the cognitive parking spot becomes your brain's best friend. Hack 14. The cognitive parking spot. Your brain hates open loops. When you're deep into a task and have to stop suddenly, your mind keeps rehearsing unfinished pieces in the background. That's why you walk away from focused work and still feel mentally entangled, replaying ideas in the shower, at dinner, in bed. Neurologically, this is the Zeigarnik effect. The brain clings to incomplete patterns so it doesn't lose them. The problem is that this burns energy and makes it much harder to re-enter flow later. The top 0.01% don't rely on memory to hold their place. They use a cognitive parking spot, a simple, concrete way to park their current mental state outside their head so the brain can let go without fear of losing the thread. You're not just stopping work. You're giving your mind a clear landing strip for when you return. Here's how it looks in practice. A few minutes before you pause any deep task, not after you've already stood up, stop and write down 3 things in plain, unfancy language. First, the exact point you are at. Mid-paragraph explaining X, halfway through section 2, mock-up version 3, testing color. Second, the very next tiny action you will take when you come back. Write the example for this idea. Fix the transition between these 2 sections. Compare option A and B and choose. Third, any loose thoughts or questions swirling in your head about this work. Doubts, ideas, concerns, half-formed insights. Capture them quickly and concretely. This becomes your parking ticket. You are telling your brain nothing is being lost, it's all stored right here. You are safe to disengage. That safety signal turns down the background mental noise. When you return to the task, do not think, scroll, or reorganize. Read the parking note and execute the next tiny action you wrote, even if it feels too small. That move snaps your brain back into the right context far faster than starting cold. You bypass the "where was I" or confusion that usually triggers procrastination. Over time, this habit can cut your re-entry time from 20 minutes to 2. It also changes how you feel when you're away from work. Evenings and breaks stop being haunted by half-remembered to-dos because your brain trusts the external system. You've built a bridge between focus and rest. And once you master the ability to step cleanly out of deep work and back in again, a new opportunity opens up. Designing entire stretches when you are deliberately unreachable so your best blocks stay untouched. That's the power of the unavailable autopilot you'll build next. Hack 15, the unavailable autopilot. High performers are not reachable all the time, and that is not an accident. It is a system. Most people live in permanent partial availability. Phones on, chats open, inbox refreshing in the background. Neurologically, that state keeps your brain in constant low-grade vigilance. A part of you is always scanning for the next ping, which means a part of you is never fully inside the work. The unavailable autopilot is the opposite. You deliberately create blocks of time where, by default, you do not exist for the outside world. No explanations, no apologies, no long disclaimers. During those blocks, your attention belongs only to one thing. Outside those blocks, you can be as responsive as your role demands. The power is in the contrast. Your brain learns there are sacred zones where depth is normal and interruption is abnormal. To build this, you start by choosing 1 or 2 focus windows in your day, even if they're short. 45 minutes before the world wakes up, a protected slice after lunch, a late afternoon block when others are distracted. In those windows, you pre-decide that you are unreachable, not less responsive, not trying to focus, but actually off the grid. You silence notifications, close communication apps completely, and remove any visible cues that someone might need you. If you work with others, you set a simple expectation once. Between these times, I'm in deep work. If it's truly urgent, here's the one way to reach me. Otherwise, I'll respond after. Then you let the system run. You don't renegotiate it every day based on mood. You let your environment slowly adapt to the new pattern. At first, people will still try to reach you. When they notice you only respond after your block and nothing explodes, they adjust. Internally, something deeper shifts. When your nervous system realizes that no one can suddenly yank your attention away, it relaxes. That relaxation is not laziness. It is what allows higher-order thinking to emerge. You start to experience what real concentration feels like. The sense that your mind is fully wrapped around one problem without flinching. Over time, these unavailable autopilot blocks become the anchor points of your week. You may still have chaotic days, noisy mornings, reactive afternoons, but you know there are consistent islands where your most important work gets done. That knowledge alone reduces anxiety. You stop trying to cram deep work into scraps and start trusting the system you designed. And once you have those islands of focus, you gain the headspace to ask a sharper question. Where is a small amount of effort today erasing a huge amount of effort tomorrow? The answer lives in the next idea, the asymmetric effort scan. Hack 16, the asymmetric effort scan. Not all effort is created equal. Some actions drain you today and barely change tomorrow. Others ask for a bit more focus now and quietly pay you back every week. The problem is that in the middle of a busy day, your brain doesn't naturally see this asymmetry. It just wants to get through the list. The asymmetric effort scan forces a different question. Where can a small upgrade now erase a massive amount of future work? High performers run this scan constantly. Instead of asking, how do I finish this task? They ask, how do I redesign this so future me barely has to think about it? That mindset turns you from a worker into an architect of your own workload. Here's how to use it in real time. When you notice a task repeating, weekly reports, client onboarding, content outlines, handovers, study notes, pause for a moment before grinding through it again. Ask yourself 3 things. First, how many times am I likely to do this in the next 6 months? Second, what part of this is pure repetition or unnecessary friction? Third, what tiny change could I make once that would simplify it every time? Maybe it's turning a messy email you rewrite each week into a clean template. Maybe it's turning a chaotic checklist in your head into a simple printed sequence on your desk. Maybe it's recording a short Loom-style walkthrough instead of re-explaining a process from scratch to every new person. The key is to hunt for leverage, not perfection. You're not trying to automate your entire life. You're looking for the 20% of tasks where one thoughtful pass could remove 50% of future pain. When you find a candidate, explicitly label it in your mind. This is an asymmetric move. That label matters. It justifies spending an extra 15 or 30 minutes now because you feel the future relief in advance. Neurologically, you are giving your brain a delayed reward big enough to compete with the immediate urge to just rush it. Over time, your environment starts reflecting those choices. Fewer decisions repeated, fewer steps reinvented, more things running on quiet, low-maintenance rails. This scan also reveals tasks that don't deserve optimization at all. If something is low impact and infrequent, it may be better to tolerate minor inefficiency than to engineer a system. That realization is freeing. You stop tinkering everywhere and start investing effort where the curve is steepest. As your days fill with more asymmetric wins, you feel a subtle but profound shift. You are no longer just working harder inside the same structure. You are continually bending the structure in your favor. And once you understand that energy and impact can be decoupled like this, the next logical move is to stop organizing your to-do list by urgency alone and start organizing it by the kind of energy your brain actually has. That's where the Energy First to-do list rewires how you approach every single day. Hack 17. The Energy First to-do list. Most to-do lists are built like punishment, a pile of tasks sorted by urgency and guilt. From a brain perspective, that's a trap. Your energy is not flat across the day. There are windows when your cortex is sharp and creative, others when it's methodical but slower, and others when it just wants something easy. The Energy First to-do list respects that rhythm instead of fighting it. You stop asking what's due first and start asking, what kind of brain do I have right now, and what is that brain perfect for? High performers intuitively do this. They feed their peak energy with deep generative work, their medium energy with analytical or administrative tasks, and their low energy with simple mechanical moves that still matter. To make this practical, divide your tasks by energy type, not by project, creative, strategic, analytical, structured, and admin routine. In the morning, instead of staring at a mixed list, you scan your internal state. If you feel clear and engaged, you pull from the creative bucket. Writing, designing, problem-solving, decisions that change direction. When you feel a bit slower but still focused, you pull from the analytical bucket, reviewing, editing, planning, budgeting. When your brain feels done, late afternoon, post-meeting fatigue, you pull from the admin bucket, inbox zero, file organizing, simple updates. You're no longer shaming yourself for not being creative at 4 p.m. or trying to do deep thinking 15 minutes before a call. You're matching task to biology. This shift reduces self-sabotage. A lot of procrastination is just your brain refusing to do the right work at the wrong time. When you offer it a menu that fits its current fuel level, resistance drops. You also protect your best hours from being eaten by trivialities. Once you feel what it's like to put your most alive energy onto your most important work, it becomes very hard to go back. You'll start defending those windows automatically. Over time, your days look less like a chaotic scramble and more like a sequence. Deep, then structured, then light. You still get tired, but you stop fighting your own physiology. And there's another bonus. When your energy-matched work is done, your mind is freer to think about bigger systems. You can ask, how do I keep all these ideas and tasks out of my head entirely, so my brain can focus on thinking instead of remembering? That question leads straight into the next strategy, building a second brain on paper that costs nothing and gives your mind room to breathe. Hack 18. The second brain on paper. Your brain is built for ideas, not storage. Every time you force it to remember tasks, deadlines, fragments of conversations, and flashes of insight, you're turning a supercomputer into a cluttered hard drive. The result is mental noise, that constant background hum of, don't forget this, don't drop that, what was that great idea from yesterday? High performers solve this by building a second brain outside their skull. Not with fancy software, but with something anyone can access, pen and paper. A simple notebook can become an extension of your prefrontal cortex if you use it the right way. The goal is not to create a beautiful journal. It's to create a trusted place where information goes to live so your mind can stop gripping it so tightly. Here's the rule: nothing important stays only in your head. Ideas, tasks, questions, commitments, patterns you notice, all of it gets captured. One notebook, always within reach. Divide each page into 3 loose zones as you move through the day. At the top, write today's focus and list your single domino task, plus at most 2 supporting actions. In the middle, catch tasks and to-dos as they appear, calls to make, things to fix, follow-ups. At the bottom, dump thoughts and insights, sentences from books, realizations from conversations, random sparks that feel meaningful. You don't pause to organize perfectly, you just capture. The act of writing sends a signal to your brain. This is safe. It will not be lost. That signal alone reduces anxiety and intrusive reminders. Once or twice a day, you briefly sweep your notebook. Migrate tasks into whatever system you use to schedule work. Highlight or star insights you want to revisit. Draw a simple arrow from ideas that connect. You're slowly building a map of your thinking, not just a log of your obligations. Over weeks, patterns emerge. You'll notice themes you return to, problems that show up repeatedly, concepts that keep exciting you. This is the raw material of your future projects and decisions, stored outside the fragile space of working memory. The second brain on paper becomes a quiet collaborator. It remembers for you, tracks for you, and reflects you back to yourself. Psychologically, this changes the texture of your days. You stop feeling like you're carrying everything in your head. You gain confidence that nothing important will slip through a crack because it lives somewhere you trust. That frees up cognitive bandwidth for real thinking, solving, creating, connecting, rather than just holding. And as you see your own notes over time, you're confronted with a deeper question. Is the way I spend my time aligned with the person I'm trying to become? That's where the next idea, the identity checkpoint question, steps in as a quiet but powerful filter before every new commitment. Hack 19. The identity checkpoint. Question. Productivity is not just about what you do. It's about who you are becoming while you do it. Most people make decisions from the identity they already have. The overcommitted friend, the always available colleague, the person who tries to do everything. The brain loves consistency, even with identities that hurt you. That's why you keep saying yes to things you resent. The identity checkpoint. Question slices straight through that autopilot. Before you agree to a task, a call, a project, you pause for 2 seconds and ask, is this how the person I'm becoming spends time? Not the current, stressed version of you. The future, upgraded version you actually want to inhabit. This question pulls your decision-making out of the moment's pressure and into a longer timeline where your values live. To make it real, you first need a rough sketch of that future identity. Not a fantasy superhero, but a clear, believable next version of you. Maybe it's someone who ships meaningful work consistently, someone whose health is non-negotiable, or someone who leads, not just reacts. Hold that image in your mind. Give it texture, how they move through a day, what they protect, what they simply don't tolerate anymore. Then every time a new demand appears, jump on this call, join this project, can you just help with this quickly? You run it through the checkpoint. Ask the question honestly. If the answer is no, that future you would not spend time this way, then you have your guidance. You may still choose to say yes occasionally, but you are no longer lying to yourself about the cost. This question quietly reprograms your brain. Each time you act in alignment with the future identity, even in a small way, you reinforce that neural pattern. You become, in practice, a little more like that person. Each time you act against it, you feel the friction more clearly. That discomfort is useful. It's feedback, not failure. Over weeks, your calendar begins to tell a different story. Fewer random obligations, more blocks dedicated to the work and people that match your trajectory. You start to experience a subtle pride when you decline something that doesn't fit, not because you're too important, but because you're finally being honest about who you want to be. And as your days align more tightly with your future self, another powerful move becomes possible. Not just choosing what to do, but deliberately choosing what to stop carrying forward. That is the heart of the next strategy, the weekly abandonment ritual. Hack 20, the weekly abandonment ritual. Your brain and calendar are not just overloaded with what you do, but with what you keep dragging along for later. Old projects, half-started habits, ideas you no longer care about, obligations that made sense 6 months ago, but now only exist as quiet guilt. Neurologically, every open loop occupies mental space. Even if you never touch it, your brain keeps a background tab open. Don't forget this, you said you would. The weekly abandonment ritual is how high performers cut those invisible anchors. Once a week, you don't just plan what to add. You deliberately decide what to stop. Not out of failure, but out of strategy. You create a recurring moment where quitting, pausing, or postponing is not a shameful accident. It is an intentional choice. Here's how it works. Pick a fixed day and time, often at the end of the week, when you review your active commitments, projects, side hustles, learning goals, recurring calls, even social obligations. One by one, ask 3 questions. First, is this still genuinely important for the person I'm becoming? Second, if I were not already doing this, would I start it today? Third, what is the real cost, in time, energy, attention, of keeping this alive for another month? Be brutally honest. Many things that once felt exciting will fail these tests. That doesn't mean they were mistakes. It means your context has changed. For each item, choose one of 3 outcomes. Continue with full intention, pause with a clear review date, or abandon completely. Write the decision down. Say it out loud if you need to. The brain respects rituals. The moment of abandonment is freeing, but also delicate. Your nervous system may protest, but you invested so much already. What will people think? What if you need this later? That's loss aversion talking, not wisdom. You counter it by focusing on what you are gaining: space for deeper work, relief from quiet guilt, energy to pour into the few things that truly matter now. When you kill a low-return project, you're not just deleting tasks, you're removing an identity burden. You are no longer the person who should really get back to X. That mental label disappears. Over time, this ritual becomes a psychological reset. Your active list stays lean and alive, not bloated with ghosts. You build trust with yourself. If something stays on your plate, it's because you chose it this week, not because it's a leftover from another version of you. As your life gets lighter, a new clarity emerges. You can see, often for the first time, how powerful the remaining habits and systems actually are when they're not diluted by clutter. That sets the stage for the final realization of this entire journey. Productivity is not about cramming more into your days, but about aligning small, repeatable behaviors so tightly with who you want to be that focus starts to compound on its own. That is the core of the compounding focus finale, where everything you've learned turns into one simple, long-term operating system. Hack 21, the compounding focus finale. Look back at everything you've just installed. You audited your reality, protected your best hours, cut invisible meetings, designed smarter starts, shifted deadlines, respected your energy, built a second brain, filtered by identity, and learned to abandon what no longer fits. None of these moves required money, apps, or heroic willpower. They required something more powerful: repeated, low-friction decisions that slowly change how your brain expects your day to feel. That is compounding focus. In neuroscience terms, every time you act in alignment with these habits, you strengthen neural pathways that favor clarity over chaos, depth over distraction, intention over impulse. At first, it feels effortful. You have to remember the audit, the future inbox, the unavailable autopilot. But then something flips. The system starts running you in the best way. This is the moment where you stop chasing hacks and start owning an operating system. Instead of asking, "How can I be more productive this week?" you ask, "How can I let these 21 behaviors run just a little more smoothly?" You don't need to apply all of them at once. Choose 3 that hit the hardest right now. Maybe the 7-minute reality audit, the single domino day, and the energy first to-do list. Commit to them for the next 7 days like an experiment. Not forever, just 7 days. Watch what happens to your sense of control, your evenings, your internal dialogue. Then layer in one more habit at a time. Allow your identity to catch up with your behavior. See yourself genuinely as someone who protects attention, designs boundaries, and directs their days instead of surviving them. From a neuropsychological perspective, the biggest shift is not in your calendar, it's in your self-concept. You're teaching your brain a new story. I am not scattered. I am someone whose focus grows stronger the more I use it. That story becomes self-fulfilling. When setbacks hit, and they will, you don't throw out the system. You return to the smallest building block: one audit, one domino, one frictionless start, one clean no, one parked thought, one weekly abandonment. Tiny actions repeated carve new grooves. Over months and years, those grooves become the path your life naturally follows. So here's the closing challenge. Right after this video, choose one habit to install today and one identity sentence to carry for the next 90 days. One behavior, one belief. For example, every weekday, I start my day with a single domino task before opening messages, and I am someone whose time reflects what truly matters, not what shouts the loudest. Write them down. Place them where you will see them every morning. Then let the compounding begin. The difference between a busy life and a directed life is not luck, talent, or tools. It is what you repeatedly choose to protect.